So the first thing is we need to first know what exactly is a perpendicular bisector. So as we can see over here that we have this blue line. This is a line segment consisting of these 2 points A and B, and this is one other line which is the perpendicular bisector, and this perpendicular bisector is basically bisecting this blue line in 2 parts. This blue line is being split into 2 equal parts, I can see over here, and the angle over here is 90 degrees. So just to make things simple, I can just say that a perpendicular bisector is a line which bisects any line segment at an angle of 90 degrees. So we can clearly see that this is the line segment that we have. This orange line is the perpendicular bisector, which is basically dividing this blue line into 2 equal parts at an angle of 90 degrees. Now obviously there are some certain steps that you need to follow in order to find out the equation of the perpendicular bisector. So the key concept over here is really simple. As we can see that this line, this orange line, is bisecting the blue line, so obviously there should be a midpoint over here. So this is the midpoint that you need to first find out, and this is our very first starting point. So the step number 1 to find the equation of perpendicular bisector is to find the midpoint of the given line segment. Whichever line segment is given to you by the examiner between any 2 points, you need to first find out the midpoint. The second step you need to find out is the second step that you need to perform is basically you need to find the gradient of the line segment. So find gradient of line AB, and this gradient is basically given as m1, which is your first slope, the slope of the original line. The third step that you need to perform is really easy, really simple, and the third step is to find the gradient of perpendicular bisector, which is given as m2. And there is a relation between m1 and m2, and the relation is based on the concept of perpendicular slopes. And the relation is basically really simple. The relation says that if you have 2 slopes, you have 2 lines, and those 2 lines are perpendicular to each other, so their product is basically equal to -1. In simple words, the slope of line 1 and the slope of line 2 will have the product of -1. You can improvise this situation by saying that they are negative reciprocals of each other. So you can even write it like this. This is the third step that you need to perform. The fourth step and the final step is to basically, then we have one example to do. The fourth and the final step is to find the equation. Find the equation of perpendicular bisector by either applying y equal to mx plus c, or there is one more way that you can do, which is y minus y1 equal to m2 x minus x1. Just to be precise, use m2 at all times whenever you are finding the equation of perpendicular bisector. Now let's look into one of the examples in which you need to find out the equation of perpendicular bisector. So we have these 2 points, and the first step is really simple. You have to first find out the midpoint. So the first step is to find out the midpoint, which means that if you want to find out the midpoint, we always apply this formula, which is x1 plus x2 over 2 comma y1 plus y2 over 2, and I can clearly see that this is my value of x1, y1, and this is my value of x2 and y2. So you just need to input the respective values in the formula, and then you will be able to find out the coordinates of the midpoint. So x comma y will be equal to, my value of x1 is -2 plus the value of x2 is 6 over 2 comma the value of y1 is 7, then we have a -9 over 2. Now I can clearly see that my value of midpoint will be equal to -2 plus 6 will give you a +4 over 2 will ultimately give you a 2 comma 7 minus 9 is basically -2 over 2 will ultimately give you a -1. So these are the coordinates of the midpoint, and you will have to use these coordinates of midpoint in a later stage. Then the second step is to basically find out the result of M1, which is the slope of the line segment, the given line segment. So M1 is always given as y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So basically y2 minus y1 means y2 minus y1, and then we have x2 minus x1. So M1 will be equal to -9 minus 7 will definitely give you -16 over this will give you +8, giving you the value of M1 is equal to -2. So this is my value of M1, but you are more interested in the value of M2. Now, as I mentioned earlier, your value of M2 is the negative reciprocal, so you can just directly find out the value of M2 by taking its reciprocal and changing its sign. So if it's -2, you can just take 1 over 2. It was initially negative, but now you will take it as positive. So this will be just 1 over 2. Let me give you some more examples. Like for instance, if you would have given the value of M1 is equal to maybe 6. So the reciprocal of 6 is 1 over 6. Initially it was +6, but now you will take a negative. So the result will be -1 over 6. So you can just take a few examples by yourself as well and try to practice this concept of negative reciprocals. So the concept is really simple. So you have this M2, you have this midpoint. Now by using this slope M2 and by using this midpoint, we will easily find out the equation of the perpendicular bisector, which is really simple. And the way you will do it is extremely easy. What you will do is you will just apply y is equal to m2x plus c, and then in place of y and in place of x you will just substitute the values of your midpoint. So I can see this is my value of y, this is my value of x. So -1 is equal to m2 is basically half, your x is basically 2 plus c. Now if you just solve this, you will have -1 is equal to +1 plus c. Now if you just take this +1 on the left hand side, you will get c is equal to -2. So my value of c is basically -2. Now finally what you will do is you'll just write y is equal to m2x plus c, because you are more concerned about the equation rather than just finding out the value of c. So what you have to do is you have to resubstitute this value of c over here. Y remains the way it is. This m2 is basically half. This x remains the way it is, plus this c is basically -2. And this is your final equation of the perpendicular bisector. So if I give you a small recap, the first step is to find the midpoint. The second step is to find M1. The third step is to find M2 by applying the concept of negative reciprocal. The fourth step is to basically apply y equal to m2x plus c. and then finally find the value of c by substituting the values of your midpoint in place of y and x. Once you do this, you have to resubstitute this value of c with the value of m2, and finally you have your equation of perpendicular bisector. Let's move on towards one more example. So let's do this example now. So we have this example. The first step is really easy, really simple. All you have to do is just find the midpoint. Every single time you have to do it like this. So y will be equal to, so what points do we have? We have 5, 3, 4 and 8. So consider this as x1, y1, x2 and y2. So if you want to find out the midpoint, it's always x1 plus x2 over 2 comma y1 plus y2 over 2. And finally, if you just input the value, so x comma y will be equal to x1 plus x2 will give you 4 plus 5 over 2 comma y1 plus y2 will give you 11 over 2 because 8 plus 3 is 11. So this will give you 9 over 2 comma 11 over 2. These are my coordinates of the midpoint. The second step is to find out the value of m1. So value of m1 is basically m1 is equal to y2 minus y1. That means 8 minus 3 over x2 minus x1, that means 4 minus 5, leaving you with m1 is equal to 8 minus 3 is basically 5, 4 minus 5 is negative 1, leaving you with a negative 5. So I can see my value of m1 is negative 5. Once you have your value of m1, as I mentioned earlier, how will you find out the value of m2? It's the negative reciprocal. So for the negative reciprocal, you will just do m2 is equal to, you will take the reciprocal of negative 5, leaving you with 1 over 5, 1 over negative 5, but you will also change the sign. So it will be positive 1 over 5. So this is my value of m2. Once you have your value of m2, now these are the two main things that you have to do. Use this m2 and use this midpoint to find out your equation. As I mentioned earlier, there is one more way to find out the equation. You can apply this formula directly, y minus y1 equal to m2 x minus x1. Now here all you have to do is just input these coordinates of 9 over 2 and 11 over 2 in place of x1 and y1, and substitute this 1 over 5 in place of m2. So if you do this, it will be really simple. So y minus y1 is 11 over 2 is equal to m2 is 1 over 5, x minus x1 is basically 9 over 2. Now all you have to do is just do some simplification. So y is equal to 1 over 5x minus, if you just do it in easy way, it will be 9 over 10. If you take this thing on the right hand side, it will be positive 11 over 2. Now if you just solve this, you will get y is equal to 1 over 5x plus 23 over 5. So this is how, and this is my equation of perpendicular bisector.